Hello and welcome to Media Reporter. My name is Mona Gora, and with me today co-hosting is my sister and colleague.
Hello, my name is Lisa Gora.
You may have heard the recent buzz about two proposed bills on the Senate and floor House called Stop Online Piracy Act and the Protect Intellectual Property Act, otherwise known as SOPA and PIPA. Like many of us, we've probably heard bits and pieces here and there about the two acts through newspaper headlines, Facebook posts, or more notably from the online protests of Wikipedia and Google. And most of us are probably wondering, are questioning what this exactly is all about, questioning the future of the internet and what our internet freedoms are. Well, with us today is Professor Grimelmann, an associate professor at New York Law School, teaching in the fields of intellectual property and internet law. Thank you, Professor Grimelmann, for being here with us today.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, Professor Grimelmann, what is the buzz about with SOPA and PIPA? SOPA and PIPA, in the simplest form, pretty much address the online piracy. So what is the real threat of piracy? What's the history, if you'd like to go in and describe that for us? And how is it that SOPA and PIPA protect against piracy?
Okay, so the story here really goes back into the 90s with the rise of the internet. And people started putting music and books and movies and all kinds of entertainment and content online. And as part of a strategy to try and make the internet safe for copyrighted content, the Clinton administration passed a bill known as the Digital Millennium Copyright Act, which set up the basic framework that the intermediaries, like YouTube, who host content, aren't going to be liable if their users upload infringing material. So if somebody takes a recent movie and uploads a full copy of Iron Man to YouTube, then YouTube's not going to be liable as long as they honor a notice to take it down when they get told that it's there. And so this basic trade-off about immunity for them was the sort of main structure of copyright in the 90s. Then we saw in the 2000s sites and services like Napster and Grokster, and basically services that allowed people to exchange files with great speed around the world, and that were used very heavily for infringement. So there was a whole round of lawsuits over them, at the end of which it seemed like a lot of obviously bad actors, like Napster, more or less dedicated to infringement, were offline, and more seemingly law-abiding sites, the YouTubes of the world, were online. But in recent years, it's also become clear that a lot of the infringement has just shifted to other places. So you had sites that, unlike these major commercial services, were located abroad and were much harder to reach.
Right.
So basically, SOPA and PIPA were copyright bills drafted to be targeted at those foreign sites that were enabling infringement.
Okay, so the foreign sites that are outside the control of the U.S. courts, so those foreign sites basically don't have to worry about adhering to any cease or desist orders or anything of that nature from the United States? Or is it just that they believe that they can do as they please because they are not within the U.S. jurisdiction?
It's pretty much the same thing.
Okay.
That if you are located in Estonia, you're probably not going to pay a lot of attention to an order from a U.S. court.
Right.
So then why all the uproar with American website companies? I mean, they obviously are complaining that SOPA and PIPA are impacting them as well. So how would the laws allegedly affect them?
So this really gets at the basic strategies that SOPA and PIPA used to go after the foreign sites. Obviously, because they're overseas, it really doesn't matter what the law in the U.S. says. We still can't easily arrest most of the people behind those sites. So instead, SOPA and PIPA were targeted at other online services that are necessary for those sites to work. So, for example, SOPA included a provision that would let the U.S. Attorney General get orders to essentially take away the internet name of a site. You could take away its .com name, and that will make it harder for people to get to it. They also included provisions targeting the companies that process credit card payments, that serve internet ads, basically follow the money and go after other middlemen who aren't directly involved in the infringement, but are in some way connected to it or providing services to them.
So now you're saying the Attorney General is the one that would then have the jurisdiction or the power to monitor these type of sites. But what is the actual body or monitoring agency that is tracking these sites, or how's it that they get the information that, hey, we have this website that they're taking copyrights, they're infringing on these copyrights from the United States. How is it that that they get the information that these sites have it? Or
there wasn't really a formal mechanism,
okay.
but it would be investigated like a lot of the way that the FBI would investigate
Okay.
internet crime or other kinds of crime. They would take some information from copyright owners who would complain. They say, we found this site that we think is particularly bad, and you should look into them. And then the Attorney General can use its investigatory powers to gather evidence and then decide who to take action against.
Okay.
SOPA and PIPA also included provisions that were narrower, but that enabled some kinds of actions by copyright owners directly against the intermediaries. So you couldn't shut off the names of a website, but they could bring a complaint to a court for an order asking for the payment processor or the ad networks to shut off doing business with it.
Right, right. So what the monitoring agencies are targeting are those that actually receive payments or take payments from these sites that have infringing material? Is that what?
It's a follow the money strategy.
I see, okay.
So is there ever a chance that a site could be blacked out or have their funding cut off without any due process? Meaning, are there notice requirements that are given to the alleged offending website user or the website domain name? Is there a process where an appeals process? So, I mean, could they ever be blacked out or have their funding cut off without receiving any notice that there's
Investigation going on against them?
right? Do you know?
This gets us into some of the more controversial parts of these bills.
Okay.
So both of these bills allowed courts to grant temporary restraining orders. So orders that get entered before the site has had a chance to come in and contest the allegations. Courts generally could do this
Right,
in a variety of cases. Frequently criminal investigations will, the indictment will be unsealed at the same time as the arrests are made. So this is not particularly novel in that respect. So it lets courts go in and issue these orders that then the payment processors or the internet infrastructure companies have to comply with quickly.
Okay.
But there was a lot of controversy over the standards that would be used for that. That you can come back to court and try to argue against some of these. But if you look at how the courts have been treating some similar cases involving trademark owners here, there are some reasons to be concerned that all a major trademark owner has to do is come into court and allege that these 60 websites are selling counterfeits.
Right.
And it may not be the case that the courts are really granting that order based upon a full hearing of all the evidence. They're issuing injunctions against a wide variety of parties who may not, under the actual reading of the law that authorizes courts to do that, really be open to that kind of order.
So maybe our viewers, if maybe we could explain, is there a big difference between SOPA and PIPA, or are they essentially the same laws, just under
Different names.
Right.
The details have been shifting a lot. There have been a variety of versions of them. There was originally one called COISA, was introduced in the previous session of Congress, very near the end. And it was clear that it wasn't going to get passed during the lame duck session after the elections. So the process started again at the start of last year. And the SOPA and PIPA are basically just names for the House and Senate versions of the two bills. But even those have been amended as they've gone along, so the definitions and the exact provisions have been a pretty substantial moving target. Exactly which powers were delegated to the Attorney General versus being in private hands was a focus of a lot of controversy. There have been other provisions that have been added in. So there's the so-called Justin Bieber streaming provision. That's the nickname it got. It's not the official one.
Okay.
nickname.
That makes it a felony to infringe copyrights through streaming video.
Okay.
And this provision could potentially have been used to put Justin Bieber in jail when he got famous by posting videos of himself singing copyrighted songs.
Right, from when he first started out with his career.
Exactly.
In the beginning.
So then is that what the uproar and the concern was originally, just with lay people who want to listen to videos from YouTube, or they don't want to watch TV anymore, they'll watch it on their laptops. So is that new culture going to be changed? Would it be potentially be affected by SOPA and PIPA in the sense that should everyone be concerned that they no longer will be able to watch their favorite shows on YouTube or to whatever website it will be posted on?
Well, the sponsors of these bills and the entertainment companies who support them will be very quick to say that the average home user is not the intended target of them.
Right.
Of course, it's very much the point of these bills to try and keep copyrighted content off so that you can't just sit on your couch and watch any movie instantly without paying.
Right.
And that you don't get to jump and see all of the clips from various websites. A lot of the opposition came instead from tech companies that were concerned about loose definitions.
Right.
That if you look at the language used to describe the targets of this, foreign websites dedicated to infringement, that sounds like the kind of place we should ought to be targeting, but the actual technical definitions in the bills raised concerns that maybe a company like Dropbox that provides storage for users and they can use to upload files and share them with others could be caught up and could be accused of being an infringing site and could have all of their payments cut off and could have their domain name taken away.
Right.
And so this raised a lot of concerns in the tech community. And that, I think, mushroomed into concern among users, not that they were going to get arrested themselves, but that the sites they depend on and love might go away without warning.
Right.
Right.
So, for instance, just you had referenced Dropbox, and I think that there's some correlation between Dropbox and then the Megaupload that has now been seen as the controversial site, where they're known as the ultimate cyberspace toolbox or storage box online. And so that would be, is that one of the quintessential websites that people can look to, and maybe one of the cases that's out there now to understand why such an allegation would be made, or why the CEOs are in trouble because they had the knowledge that there was infringed in material on there or in their storage
Well,
website.
Megaupload is a foreign-based,
Yes.
not U.S. It's not on U.S. soil.
It's Hong
therefore
Kong-based.
okay. So SOPA and PIPA would target that particular
Yes.
domain name. Okay.
So this is a fascinating story. And one of the things to note about it is that four of the executives of Megaupload were arrested in New Zealand a couple weeks ago, and we're trying to extradite them to stand trial here on criminal copyright infringement charges. So to one extent, this could be an illustration of the kinds of things SOPA and PIPA are designed to stamp out, and the dangers of infringement-based business models. On the other hand, it's also been used to argue that SOPA and PIPA were unnecessary because existing copyright law would suffice to bring them to justice. Now, the Megaupload story itself is wonderful. It's a website that's very cheeky, very go-get-em, very high traffic. They actually commissioned a video in the fall of various famous musicians giving shout-outs to them and singing the Megaupload song as a way of promoting themselves. And it turns out they've got a lot of money. They've taken in $175 million, according to the indictment. And according to the indictment, almost all of that's based upon users paying premium fees so they can get more access to download movies and TV series and lots of infringing material.
And I have to say that even information that I read was that all of them happen to have the most ornate cars, and even the types of goods that they buy themselves for wherever that they work. They have 55 to 85-inch screen televisions. So everyone was asking, where is this material or the money coming from that they can purchase such things?
Yeah, I mean, the founder and CEO, Kim.com,
Right.
who legally changed his name, had a fleet of 20 Mercedes-Benzes, 2 100-inch plus TV screens,
Right.
and a Predator statue. This is all in the indictment as things to be seized. And from the emails mentioned in the indictment, it seems like he and his co-workers understood very clearly that their heavy users were using it to infringe,
Right.
and they'd have these customer support emails that were essentially, this person is uploading, the complete Dexter, and he's complaining that something's going wrong. We have to look into this and fix it because he's the kind of customer we want.
Right, right.
And evidence like that's just damning.
Of course.
The indictment also contains a lot of allegations about things they did to increase business and make the site more attractive to users. That's the kind of thing that people who work at companies like Dropbox read and worry about. Because they have a premium subscription model. You pay more for more storage,
right.
which sounds kind of like Megaupload's pay more for more storage model.
Exactly.
And so we were watching very closely the case as it proceeds forward to see whether it provides better guidance on what Megaupload did, was accused of doing, that really would violate the law in a way that wouldn't make other executives nervous that an attorney general determined to get them for some other reason couldn't
Right.
prosecute them too.
Now, what would be some of those elements that owners of these other websites can make sure to limit themselves and not using them as much as Megaupload did, or the Cienter element of whether they really need to have some kind of monitoring system in place so that they know exactly what type of information is going on their website, or what are the alternative remedies?
The big dispute today in copyright law is about what level of knowledge websites and other online services have about what's going on them. The DMCA's compromise was that you had to have specific knowledge about a specific infringing video or piece of content, and then you had to take it down. But it came with a couple of conditions on that. That you couldn't have actual knowledge of infringement or knowledge from which infringing activity was apparent. And there have been lots and lots of lawsuits over the meaning of that. There's a lawsuit against YouTube that's pending right now that turns on that phrase, maybe decided relatively soon. And a lot of companies are watching that very closely. One of the ways of looking at SOPA and PIPA is a concern by content companies that the duties of websites to monitor what's being uploaded, sort of proactively go out and check, is this infringing, weren't stringent enough, and they want them to be more stringent. But this is exactly the same concern that the web companies have, that they're going to get asked to do the impossible. How could I possibly have known that that was infringing,
Right.
and that the person didn't have a legitimate right to upload it? People take snippets of videos to comment on them. There are lots of other reasons, and not all of those will be infringing.
So so the tech industry, they're the main critics of SOPA and PIPA. And a large part of that probably has to do with the fact that SOPA and PIPA can be interpreted to put a more stringent duty to monitor on them, right? And that will take a lot more resources from their end to actively monitor that. It might even be impossible, as they probably are arguing. So, in a sense, what's going on now with SOPA and PIPA? I know on January 24th, the Senate and House are supposed to continue discussions and negotiations. Do you know what was determined?
So the big story here was the January 18th internet blackout.
Right.
It really wasn't all the internet, but it was a number of leading sites, most notably Wikipedia, voluntarily blanked themselves.
Right.
The idea being to illustrate this is what things might look like if these bills pass. And Wikipedia in particular seems to have mobilized a lot of citizens to call their
they
congressional
did.
representatives to say, I'm really worried about that. And the result of it is that the politics of the bills just flipped overnight. They went from seeming like bills that would pass over some opposition but were likely to pass into political toxic waste.
Right.
And a lot of Republicans jumped ship immediately. Democrats were a little bit slower because their leadership had been pushing them to vote for it. But once they were released from that, the opposition was really bipartisan. So the tablings pretty much indicate that they're not coming back in this form soon. I think we should expect that the content industries will ask for some narrower, modified version of this at some point in the future.
Right.
And it will be very interesting to see whether this strong internet activism continues with those bills or it was a one-time unique event.
Right. Because, it was amazing. I think, New York Times has even called it with the Wednesday, January 18th, on the online activism, a political coming of age for the tech industry. So I think everyone found that so phenomenal that 10,000 websites went dark, more than 7 million people signed a Google petition opposing the bills, and essentially web protesters showed for the first time that they can have an impact on the legislative process. So I think that's also an interesting concept to look to in the future.
Internet protesting.
Will internet protesting become a thing of the future? Will everyone be able to raise their voices once again like they did on Wednesday, potentially for other types of issues? So I think that's going to be a very interesting thing to see.
This has been an amazing year for protests and technology. You think about the Arab Spring, so much of that was extensively documented using video, using photographs, disseminated around the world using the internet, that really the end in Egypt for the regime came when it tried to turn off the internet.
Right.
And that was such a signal of desperation that it made everybody realize that they were about to fall.
Right.
Occupy Wall Street has not had the same kind of direct political success that the internet blackout did, but it's also been a very technologically informed set of protests. They use video very extensively. We're really seeing video and internet tools just becoming integrated into all kinds of activism.
Right. I even think for the first few days of Occupy Wall Street, how they set up those meetings was essentially through Facebook posts saying, come out and support on this and this day. So I think it just reinforces the fact that it's going to be a technical industry, and who knows, where protesting will go in terms of using internet as your main resource for the future.
So many aspects of life are going online. There's the cultural aspects that these debates are about, but there are also the political ones, and we're seeing that worked out in fascinating ways.
Right. So I think the major supporters of the bill is Hollywood, really. It comes down to old culture versus popular culture, whereas we had mentioned before, who's really going to the movies anymore? Everyone wants to watch their favorite shows on television. So, even streamlining or uploading their favorite songs and favorite movies onto the website. Do you think that regular end consumers should be more? They should be watching out for their best interest more now because of SOPA and PIPA. The fact that it has come during a time where many people are streamlining, are uploading movies and music. Should they
be more concerned?
Should they be more concerned? Because I'm sure. Do you know if SOPA and PIPA are also refining a number of laws in terms of criminalizing Americans' actions in terms of the uploading music and movie files?
So in one respect, SOPA and PIPA are a reaction to the fact that campaigns targeted at individuals have largely failed. There was a period when the record industry was suing a lot of people for downloading music.
Right.
And that campaign was a public relations disaster and not that effective in stemming the tide. Right now, there are still a lot of lawsuits targeting individuals, but they're being brought by fringe players in the industry. By companies that really don't have big reputations and can be much more aggressive in suing individuals. I think you're really seeing a question about what the future of the culture industry looks like.
Right.
That the major studios and the major record labels are not doing well, that they are seeing their overall revenues decline, their share of the industry is shrinking.
Right.
It may actually be that we're doing very well overall in terms of cultural production, that there's so many more small publishers, so many small record labels, that the overall revenues may actually be going up. It's just the majors that are hurting. And one of the questions is what kinds of copyright laws are best for the small players who may get make most of their money not through direct sales, but through concerts, for example, in the music industry. In that case, they are not as concerned with copyright law. They just want an infrastructure they can use to connect with their fans effectively, and then they tour, and that's how they make a living. So we're seeing a really deep shift in the businesses, and this is not turning out to be a very bad time to be an individual. There's an amazing range of really vibrant culture we can see, and the internet has its fascinating role in distributing it.
Do you foresee any geographic borders being put on the internet? I mean, that's essentially where we could be heading in terms of will we prevent our users here in the United States from entering into websites, based in China or Egypt?
Or a culture like what is happening in China, where they're ousting all Facebook, and so no computer user can access that website. Will we ever have anything like that here?
So this is really what the big debate is about. Because, of course, SOPA and PIPA wouldn't be able to kick websites offline completely. They would just have made it impossible to reach them from the United States. So this really is the question. Are we going to a world where the internet is bordered? And as you point out, some countries are very aggressive right now in cutting off access. China very carefully monitors what its citizens can get at. Of course, as I mentioned before, Egypt basically tried to shut the internet off entirely, and that didn't work. These bills were really the U.S.'s first really serious foray into doing that. Would the U.S. say, these things cannot be accessed from the U.S.? The irony is that for some kinds of things, we have a very bordered internet already. If you have bought some videos for streaming from a major service, and you take a trip to Canada, you will find that you can't access them because of geographic restrictions on where you can stream them. And so, in fact, just through licensing deals, the world is already very sliced up already.
Well, thank you very much. I mean, it seems as though our time has run out. Media Reporter wants to thank you so much for joining us here today, on behalf of myself and Lisa Gora.
Thank you very much.
We thank you, and we hope that you can join us again on Media Reporter very soon.
Thank you very much. It's
Thank
been
you,
a pleasure.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. And so.